Chapter 37. It took Azori and me another day and a half to reach the castle. The danger of ogres must not have been significant because Uchu began to leave us for her own explorations. Still, we were prudently quiet. But dozens of times our eyes met and we smiled. We spent the night in a ravine, perhaps the same one Uju and I had sojourned in, lying on hard sandy ground under an overhanging rock. We had whispered for a while, planning. First we would warn Uju. Azori would try to keep Ivy away from me. When the king was well enough, I would tell him my story and let him judge me. We fell silent. I stared at the quarter moon while Uchu snuggled her head against my shoulder. Azori, the queen may not be so beautiful now. What? He must have been halfway to sleep. She drank the potion earlier than I did, before her wedding.
If she looks as she behaves, she'll have the face of a viper.
People don't... I stopped. I was almost shouting. Uchu rose over us, her tail down and wagging. I whispered, people don't look as they behave. Uchu settled against Azori. Oh, love, I never... He paused.
Sweet, I adore your face and your hands and the scent of your skin and the thicket of your hair. When I saw you on the receiving line, I thought you had grandeur.
I was frozen with fright and blushing scarlet.
Nonetheless, that's what I thought. You have grandeur and dignity. I was sorry when you became beautiful in a commonplace way.
Oh my. I had grandeur. I breathed in the cool night air. Perhaps I could learn to wear myself without apology, with dignity. Perhaps I could become what Azori already saw. Perhaps someday I might even be able to smile at myself in a mirror. Not yet, but maybe someday. I reached out and touched his cheek. He caught my hand and held it. Uchu rolled over on her back, legs in the air. Azori? He was asleep. I didn't wake him. We spent the night clasping hands. We crossed the castle drawbridge early the next afternoon. A groom took our horses. Azori asked,
How fares the king?
The groom answered distractedly, staring at me.
He is no better. The physician says he is losing ground.
Azori fell back a step. I took his hand, not caring if the groom saw.
The physician believes he is pining for the queen.
Where is she? I asked.
She is here. First she sneaked out of the castle and stayed away for several weeks. Now she's shut herself in her chambers. She refuses to let anyone in, and she won't come out. She won't visit her husband.
The potion had lost its effect on her, too, and she didn't want people to see her. I wondered if she knew the king was listening. The groom began to walk our horses away, but Azori stopped him.
Do you know anything of a god named Uju?
The man mumbled something.
Speak up,
Azori said.
Begging your pardon, your highness, but Uju said she...
He cocked his head at me.
Was dead. You must have been mistaken.
Ah, good. If Uju had been in prison, the groom would have told us that first. We turned toward the castle courtyard. I had heard a troubadour and bird song, just as I had on my first arrival. I swallowed. I'll go to the queen. I was the only one who might convince her to visit the king. I didn't want an encounter with her. The thought of it made me feel the poison in my throat again. But if King Oscaro's recovery hung in the balance, I had to do what I could. When we stepped into the great hall, silence spread from us in a widening ripple. I think even the bird songs quieted. We ignored everyone and hurried to Ivy's room. I knocked on her door. Go away! Leave me! I turned the knob. The door was locked. It's Aza, I called. I knew what I had to say to have a chance at admittance, but I hated saying it. I'm no longer beautiful, Your Majesty. A moment passed, and then the lock turned. Only you. Azori whispered,
Shout if you need me. I'll break down the door.
She allowed barely enough space for me to squeeze in. As soon as I entered, she locked the door behind me. The curtains were drawn. The room was in shadow. I only glimpsed Ivy's face, not enough to tell anything. I looked at her vanity table. No hand mirror, no golden flute. She flung herself on her bed, face down. Her voice was muffled. I thought you were somewhere with Sconey. Where is he? The mirror's magic ended. He's gone. I hoped this was true. I hoped I had freed him. I miss him. Her voice rose. She pounded the mattress with her fist. I want him. I conjured him up in my mind. He knew how to manage her. I heard his spider voice, and it spoke the words I needed. Skulny adored you, I said. Before you came back from Gnome Caverns, he told me how much he cared for you. She rolled over. He did? I saw her face. She no longer resembled a tragic heroine when she cried. She looked as the rest of us do. Her skin was blotchy and her nose was red. I continued. He said you were his favorite. With all his years in the mirror, he called you gallant. Perhaps I was overdoing it. She sat up. Asa, he said that. Now to help the king. Skolny loves you almost as much as his majesty does. She threw herself back down, face in the counterpane again. Nobody loves me. The king does. He leapt in front of a centaur's iron ring for you. Her life is more precious to him than his own. Even not anymore. Not now that I'm... You're still beautiful, I said, gritting my teeth. And you know how to keep a bow. You told me so. You said no minxes ever took one from you. Oh, Asa. She sat cross-legged on the bed. I'm so glad you didn't... She stopped herself. Didn't die? She smiled at me. We can be friends again. I know more ways to fix your hair. My hair was fine as it was, but I made myself smile back. Would you like to go to the king? He's longing for you. She wanted to, but first she had to choose the most becoming gown, and I had to tell her she was ravishing in every one she tried. Then came the hair, which was wispy and fine now. She pinned it up and let it down at least a dozen times. Last came the cosmetics, another anxious business. Finally she was finished, and I had to admit she showed herself to her best advantage. She was lovely. I still felt a pang that others could be lovely, and not I. When we stepped into the corridor, Jory's face registered no surprise at the change in her. Your Majesty. He bowed and then held out his arm. She took it. I positioned myself on her other side. We set off for the physician's chambers. Songbirds serenaded us as we went. We passed servants and courtiers who stared and then bowed or curtsied. Ivy nodded and ignored the stares. She stopped a yard from the king's sick room and touched her hair. She straightened her gown. Then she turned to me and whispered, He loves me. He still loves me. It was far better to be me than to be Ivy. He loves you. No minx won't take him from me now, either. She opened the door. King Oscaro sat in a chair facing the window. His expression when he turned to us was melancholy, but it changed to joy when he saw Ivy. He couldn't speak, but his smile was eloquent enough. If he noticed any alteration in her, his face didn't show it. She ran to him. My lord! She knelt, gazing up at him. He drew her to him in an awkward embrace. Jory tugged on my arm. We backed out of the room and closed the door behind us.